Good morning, everyone. Thanks for jumping on. We're going to have a fantastic session today. We're going to be covering a lot of ground, and I'll go through briefly what we're going to cover. I'll bring Sarah into the conversation, and we'll go through some of the projects that United Machinists have embarked on, and the reasons why and the benefits of some of those pieces of technology. And then we're going to get into a little bit more Q&A and discussion. So first things first, what I'd stress is today's designed to be a bit of an interactive session. So we've got the Q&A functioning through Zoom. So at the bottom of your screens, there's the Q&A functionality. So feel free anytime, jump on there. Questions will appear in front of me here, hopefully, and I'll be able to grab hold of those and kind of put those questions to Sarah as we go through the process. So in terms of what we're going to cover today, is going to be a bit of a range. So in particular, we're going to be covering why United Machinists embarked on an Industry 4 journey, first and foremost, looking at the projects that they've embarked on, the benefits of those projects, and what they've learned on the way and what those challenges have been. We'll also look a little bit at the Industry 4 demonstration network as a whole, a little bit about the serious assessment process that United Machinists have went through to prioritise some of their projects. But also then finishing off with what are the next steps, the opportunities for yourselves to get involved, get support, and that kind of thing. So there's a bit of a running order for the day. But today's all about Industry 4 and technology. So I've got a few questions that I want to talk you through with you, Sarah. But hopefully those that are on the webinar will pose a few questions as well, and we can get some interaction going. So, but first and foremost for me, I'm interested in understanding what caused you to start thinking about Industry 4 and going on that journey in the first instance.
I suppose shortly after Alex and I bought the business, we started to grow quite rapidly, and I'd come from a professional service background, used to have a consulting agency, and could see that Alex was tapping out as our ERP 1.0, so enterprise resource planning software, and really needed a bit of a hand with the scheduling of the shop. We were trying to go to a permanent night shift, and it was just becoming really difficult to manage that schedule across, we had a team of about 8 machinists at that stage, and we were starting to top out. So we could see the only way for us to scale sustainably was to bring in more technology.
Right. Okay. And so when we say bring in more technology, I think for me, talking to a lot of clients recently, the band of Industry 4, it's got a bit of an umbrella term. It's quite broad, bit of a buzzword. So what does it mean to you at United Machinists in kind of the real world, if you like?
So I did prepare for this question. So the reasons we saw Industry 4 from an opportunity perspective is, I'd never worked in a machine shop. I had no idea. So it quickly became apparent that we kept losing things. So for us, first and foremost, we wanted to know how we were performing on a live basis. And we also wanted to know immediately where stuff was. Like, I would look out the window of the production office and see 4 or 5 people all handling the same thing, looking for where it was going next. And it was quite frustrating for everybody. So when we looked at it, we were saying, number one, it was about distributing ownership of performance across the team through giving better visibility. So my first job was to say, look, this is where we're at. Now everybody, these are the jobs that are coming up, and put it into a live schedule so everybody knew what was coming up next. And then I think the biggest priority from across the team, we did a lot of workshopping on this, was about achieving flow. Like, generally, we all want to come to work to have a good time, and we all want to leave work at the end of the day feeling like we've achieved something. If we're running around like headless chickens and not in flow, nobody enjoys that. So it was really about that visibility and getting good production flow, know where things are, shifting stuff from one station to the next, which I know sounds like lean, but that's a big part of it. Yeah. And look, the other one for me from a commercial perspective is that we pay rent, and we pay our building and all of our machines. Our overhead is 24/7. So so should production be. So it really became quite addictive on, as we got better visibility of how the machines were running and lining up the jobs, how much production we could actually get out of the day. So just making it a much more efficient operation. And I suppose the last and most important part was, at the end of the day, we really wanted to make really cool shit with really cool shit. We get to use robots and use fully automated cutting edge machines to make parts for space, make parts for prosthetics, and really cutting edge medical research devices as well. So for us to be able to continue moving along with where high tech is going, then we needed to have a really high tech Industry 4 enabled workshop to do that.
Yeah, no, I think there's some really good points in there. So I think that last one in particular around I suppose that cultural piece, with teams that are coming into the workforce now, digital natives and that kind of terminology, it's really important, isn't it, that they're shown when they come into work there are actually some things that they'd be expecting to see, not maybe an old school production environment, but there's some exciting things that they can get involved with that are kind of going to energize them and want them to work in the sector, because that's a huge part of I know what you get involved with down in Dunedin as well is promoting the sector and ensuring that skill base is going to be there for the future, which this is all hopefully going to contribute towards as well. So
absolutely, I think I'm quoted saying we wanted to bring sexy back to engineering. And we bring students, we bring high school tours, the Polytech, they all come through and are just blown away by what CNC machining looks like today. It's a completely different industry to where it was even 5 years ago.
Yeah, that's a good quote. It reminds me of something we do in the Smart Factory Showcase, another part of the demonstration network, where there's a lady at the Smart Factory who talks about, we work with robots, but I get to tell them what to do, and it's quite cool. And it always gets a bit of a chuckle from people. But it's kind of underlines that fact that there's that wariness about technology, and has been for a few years. But actually, when we're seeing the new skill set coming in, from like you say, from schools, polytechnics, etc., actually that's almost a requirement, something that they're wanting to see, and pull it. There's a pull for that rather than awareness, which is great. So wonderful. Okay, so obviously as a business, there was a few pressures pushing you in the direction of needing to and wanting to adopt some Industry 4 technology. So what was I suppose the first example of you getting on that journey and starting doing some of those pieces of work?
So the very first thing was the schedule. I'd come in to get, I think originally it was supposed to be a 3 to 4 week project to just get the scheduling part of our software working. And I rapidly realized that actually we needed to redesign a whole lot of our physical setup, and also some of our processes. So that was really about understanding, purchasing of material to going through and setting up the job pack to the first operation, second operation, setup time. So really that was where we started. And we had to get into a lot of detail. And I suppose one of the immediate benefits we saw quickly was an immediate uplift in productivity. So our productivity pretty much doubled within the first month, just because we had better visibility of what was due next, and we could start anticipating making those jobs. If we had a long cycle time, anybody could go and see what was next and start setting up early. And the other one was how much money we weren't making. So, we weren't allowing the right amount of time for our setups or for QA or packaging and shipping and those kinds of things. So it gave us immediate visibility of job profitability as well.
Amazing. So by getting into that, sounds like it was quite a foundation to allow you to go and do a lot of other things in that sense, getting some of that data and those processes in your systems tidied up to allow you to go forward. I think we might actually have a slide that we can throw up that's got a bit of a view of some of the scheduling and also the customer piece that we'll talk about in a moment, Sarah. So what was the main challenge for you getting into that world of scheduling, of looking at cycle time, setup times, and so on? What was the main challenge you had to overcome?
Well, it's a continual work in process, but look, I think the key things were defining what our work centres and stations around the shop were, and understanding that for a schedule to work, that good data in equals good data out. So we really needed to understand exactly what steps things went through, and we created basically what we call our routers or our recipes to make the part. And from there, it's really training the team and getting the team to understand that if they don't close a sequence, if they're not tracking their time accurately, then everything goes out of whack. So it was that was kind of the basics, is defining what our QA steps are, our finishing steps, and making sure that each and every one of those was accounted for, so that once that sequence is closed, it's naturally moving on to the next work centre. Yeah. And then from there, it was going, well, if we've got this data, then we can start to see some real-time performance. So we can see exactly how many hours we have on forward order. It was defining what those 4 main KPIs were for the business from a performance perspective. And so we refined it down to forward hours on order, on cost of quality, on-time delivery, and what was the other one? Cost of quality, on-time delivery, hours on forward order, and I'm pulling up a complete blank here. But those 4, if they're all going well, the machine hours the day before. So that's live. All of those numbers are updated in a real-time perspective, and they're shown throughout the workshops. We've got around 4 screens throughout the building, which show everybody how we're tracking. And so if they're all green, then I can focus on that longer term, bigger improvement projects. If any of them are red for a sustained period of time, like a few days, then that's where I can start focusing in on what's causing that. And we never would have been able to get that data if we hadn't have started at those very basic steps of how do we build our routers. Yeah. We're now moved into some really cool automated material purchasing, so that all of our data that's going into these routers is set up in a way that we can push a button and essentially pull out all of our POs against our job requirements, which used to be a full-time job for one person, and it was really messy. So I suppose, what I've tried to do is systematically remove the need for a qualified machinist to have to order material, to have to put a work order out to the floor, to put the job pack together. We can now do that with basically training up administration people like myself who wouldn't have had a clue beforehand. I'm sure that everybody on the call who's had any experience in the engineering industry, particularly in CNC machine shops, will know that it's really not easy to come by CNC machinists these days. So having them doing admin is not the best use of their time.
Yeah, no, I think that's really insightful. I think it kind of underpins that foundational piece, right? All the work that you did around scheduling, getting that good quality data, and from an ERP perspective, which are really broadly is probably is giving you that industry 3 foundation to then go and do some of these things like automating your material purchasing. I think it was really interesting that you touched on that skills piece as well, around making sure we're optimizing the skills of our team and using people for the right thing. And in particular, when you were talking about the mindset of having to close out jobs and move things on, because I know that's quite a common challenge a lot of people come across, is they might have systems in place that help them to manage that, but actually they struggle with some of the buy-in from their teams to move that on. So is there anything that you did as a team to engage the workforce and make sure things were being done as required to help you keep that data clean?
I think it was really important from the start that we said to the team this was about helping them achieve that flow. So they're really, they're enjoying coming to work. It's not a shit fight, excuse my French. And so we never did focus the collection of data on individual people's performance. We approached this whole journey from the perspective of it's Alex and my job to provide an environment where you guys can perform, and we haven't done that to date. So the last thing we're going to do is use this data against you. We're going to spend a year or 2 getting systems and everything working so we can hit that flow, and then if we need to, we can start looking at a more granular level at individual people's performance. And we do that now, but generally we've we don't have any productivity or quality issues with individual people. It's really about the team, sharpening the pencil. And so that has made people buy in, because they want to see that our hours written off are low, that our cost of quality is excellent, and they want to kind of track those hours. So we haven't really had an issue with compliance. Occasionally people will forget, and it's just a bit of retraining. We have a really good Slack channel where we post updates, and otherwise, because the schedule is so visible, it kind of manages itself. And I think I said at the start, it's that distributing that ownership and accountability for the schedule. If one person doesn't do their job, then they pass it on to the next person, and it's somebody else's stuff up to fix. So we tend to not have to get our stick out too much, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. And hopefully that's useful. So I've got a few questions coming through the Q&A. So I suppose just a quick reminder that it's there and available. So and so I'll try and grab these and pitch them to you, Sarah, as they come in. But feel free to throw them in there. So we've had someone ask around, does everybody have access to manipulate the schedule? How many people have access to manipulate it versus just viewing it, Sarah? How's that managed?
So yeah, no, we only have 2 or 3 people that can actually adjust the schedule, but everybody can access it in real time. In fact, that schedule there on the screen is a client's TrueView, so they can log in and see theirs at any time. How our schedule works on the shop floor perspective is people will log in, they'll see what's at the top, and so we've trained everybody to read the schedule and take the next job at the very top of the list. If there are any issues with jobs having incorrect routers or things like that, or actually there's been a stuff up and the material sequence is closed and it's showing on the machine, for example, but that's not correct, we have a Slack channel which is monitored by our production team, and those routers we go through and we update them and fix them.
Oh yeah, great. So is that having that closed loop system, right, for your data is really important, and sounds like there's a good amount of buy-in for that. So yeah, hopefully that's answered that question. But I'll just come back to that customer TrueView piece, Sarah, because getting into that Industry 4 world is all around a big part of it is integration in the supply chain and giving our customers a view of their products and their performance when they're likely to get their orders, and similarly at the other end of the supply chain in terms of you interacting with your suppliers. That's very much getting into that integration space, giving people true visibility anytime they need it of where all their orders are. So how's that gone down with your customers, and how's it kind of differentiated you?
From what we know, and somebody on the call might correct me, we are as far as a lot of the clients and the new business that we've done over the last few years, we're the only machine shop they've ever come across in Australasia, at least, that is providing that kind of real-time visibility, and they love it. But I suppose it was quite scary for us to do it in the first place in case it was wrong, because once we put it up there, we have to commit to it, right? And so that was a bit scary. It took a bit to get used to, but actually it stimulated good conversations. So in addition to the real-time schedule, we have clients on either a monthly or a bi-monthly or quarterly performance meeting. And so we give them a dashboard. We talk about where the schedule is. We talk about our on-time delivery. And so that's been really, really useful. It's also helped train our clients on what a realistic forward schedule looks like. And it's allowed us to start looking at how we time block so that they can have the confidence that the capacity will be there when they place an order. But they're now quite aware of the fact that we need to actually, if we're going to commit to a schedule, then we need to have quite good visibility of what that forward work is. I suppose the last thing would be a massive outcome has been we just don't get phone calls and emails all day, every day about where things are at anymore. Like, that's just gone. Look, we're not perfect. I'm sure over Omicron, everybody suffered with supply chain issues and things being late, and it got a little bit out of control again then. But otherwise, generally, we don't need to have somebody sitting on the phone or in an inbox answering calls on when things are tracking to be due, because they can see it just in looking up a web link.
Yeah, I think it's great. Another example of where technology is supporting you in terms of using your team to work on the right things and move things forward effectively. It's not a huge value add, to the product and being more productive if people are on the phones and emails all day, right? So, and also I love the idea of, true kind of supply chain accountability, customers having that view, and it challenges you and the whole team to stick to that schedule and have faith in it, I suppose, and use the tools in the way they're intended to deliver the results. So I think it's probably the most powerful motivator in that sense.
Well, right down to your first dovetailing a part to go on to our 5-axis. If our apprentice is looking at a schedule and they don't go by what's on the top, then it throws out everything. And they know that the client can sit there and look and go, oh, well, that first operation hasn't been done, but it's due in 3 days. So that visibility, it just kind of makes it everybody's problem, not just mine and our delivery managers to apologise to a customer on why something's late.
Yeah. Wonderful. We could probably drop the slides off there for a second, and so I just wanted to come back to something you mentioned a little while ago. But first, while we're still on scheduling, I've just had another question come through the Q&A, and that's just around horizons. So, how far out are you scheduling your work at the moment? Have you kind of got a fixed window and then a flexible window? Or?
So we tend to. One of the things we started doing when we got really busy, because in this time we've gone from being predominantly a job shop to a production shop. So we look at how we can get a partnership agreement in place with clients, and we model out their production. So most customers are still kind of in that kind of 4 to 8 week purchase order dropping habit. And that's how their business operates. It's how their ERPs operate. We're all beholden by our ERPs. So what we have done with several of our customers is modelled out what a typical monthly production period looks like. And we'll go and block that into the schedule for up to 6 months in advance. And they just have to place the PO for that time, within 6 to 8 weeks of it coming due, so that if they are going to pull those POs, we've got time to shuffle the schedule around and reschedule it. And that's really helped stabilise our forward orders, but it's also kind of given us confidence in what that forward schedule looks like.
Yeah, so a bit of consistency, right? And the team can get into some habits and some routines as well, so it's not completely chopping and changing all the time. You've got some optimize your processes around some of those common activities, which is good.
Yeah. I suppose one of the other things is, outside of the schedule, like, we've really focused on the capital equipment that we're investing in being really nimble and flexible. In New Zealand in general, we don't do a lot of long run production. So when we invested in the i300, which is a fully automated 5-axis machining centre, it's got 40 pallets, it can run unattended. The game changer in that was that we can change from one 5-axis job to another in 90 seconds, whereas on a traditional 5-axis you're looking at 2 hours to 3 hours. So as we've learnt more from having this data, and we've got a better understanding of what our production, what our client requirements look like, we're trying to make it so that if there's an urgent prototype run or an urgent custom job, we can still fit that into production.
Yeah. Okay, understood. I think that's really important. I'm going to want to come back to talk about KPIs in a second, but got some more questions coming through the Q&A, which is great. Again, just around that scheduling piece, Sarah, are you using your ERP exclusively to do your scheduling, or have you got any kind of supplementary software? Is it a specific module that you're using?
I can't fib, can I? Because look, the scheduling on Global Shop, which is the software that we use, is not perfect. I think it's probably not perfect because our data in is not perfect yet. There are some features of the system we're actually going to be trialing over the next 6 months to see if we can actually really refine that. And in the meantime, we do override it a bit. So rather than looking at just the scheduling due date, the scheduled date, we work off work order due date, and we can manipulate it with priority codes so that our schedule on the shop floor is something we've had custom developed within Global Shop. We've also integrated Global Shop more recently with Power BI, and Power BI has allowed us to build a few dashboards that just show us the hotspots by machine and the loading by machine by week in a much more intuitive visual data way. And we'll continue to do that and integrate with Power BI to show us dashboards. And yeah, I hope that answers the question.
No,
But we don't do any manual scheduling. It's all digital.
Yeah, I think that's no. I think you've touched on a couple of the key areas there. There's opportunities. Some ERPs are designed to do that real breadth, and they're designed to kind of tackle every single problem. Some dedicate themselves into a very specialist space, and then rely on other softwares to do that scheduling piece. Through integrations. I think what we've talked about there, and what we've looked at, I think, is a common theme that you've touched on, Sarah, is that a lot of businesses that I work with have got, systems that are reasonably good. They're, well-established systems that have gone through lots and lots of versions and updates over the years to solve lots of problems. And I think actually there's a general trend that quite often when I start scratching below the surface of a problem with a client or an opportunity, we tend to find that there is, within existing systems, the functionalities to help at least partially resolve those challenges. Quite often I'll get phone calls, emails, asking, I need a system that will help me do this, and completely understand, we've got good visibility of what the challenge is, what we're trying to solve, but going straight to a new system, what my I suppose word of warning or piece of advice would be, just have we truly understood the capability of our existing system and what the gaps are? Because if we can do some training to close that, then it's going to really help us and avoid the need to do that other software piece. So
I suppose for us, it's always been this compromise on, where is the biggest pain and where do we most have to focus our time? So if we were continually underperforming on an on-time delivery perspective, then that's where I would really focus a lot of our this project time on refining the schedule and refining our scheduling process, and that capability is in Global Shop. But to get it set up and to actually administer that, you're talking almost of an analyst level person, and that's not a capability that we have in-house or that I think we need. Perhaps in another year or two, we will need to go much more detail, but I think there are some incremental steps which are not over engineering process for the size and the style of business that we have.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, isn't it? It's kind of what's fitting with your current right size of software and of usage, and is that scalable? And I suppose is the other piece, when if you've got a big kind of growth runway ahead of you, the system that you're currently using can grow with you, and you can build up, using different modules, different parts of it, and functionality over time, to really start to maximize the effectiveness that it gives you. So, great. Okay, so we've delved right into the detail there of ERP and scheduling, which is great. I know it's a massive challenge, across the board with manufacturers. How do I schedule my work? How do I know it's the right schedule? How do I get my team to adhere to that schedule and stick to it as far as possible, and diagnose issues where we can't? So hopefully that was useful for.
I'll say one more thing on it, because I know you've got a question coming up about what's next, but it might be easier to put it into context here, which is what's next from a scheduling and ERP perspective for us is to integrate into the real machine data. So at the moment, our tracking and schedule and everything is based on people clocking in and clocking out. So it's labor tracking, whereas with the new Mazaks, we are actually able to pull out real spindle data. And then we'll also look at how we can retrospectively get that data out of our other machines which don't have that level of technology. So looking at sensors and things like that. That rather than relying on people to say, look, the setup time takes longer or the cycle time's actually longer, we've got that coming in out of, well, that's weird, my hands just popped up. We've got that coming straight out of the machine into a Power BI type environment. And then we also have the labor tracking data coming straight out of Global Shop. We can match those together, and we've actually got a signal which shows we need to update these routers. And so that's going to be quite a game changer for us, and it'll just further refine our processes.
Yeah, I think that's a really good example of that transition from Industry 3 to Industry 4. Industry 3 using master data sets, for one of a better phrase, of these are the cycle times, going to an Industry 4 view of things, which is actually I can get some real-time data about performance of those cycle times for whatever reason. If I've got tool wear on a particular tool, and that's actually means I've got to do extra passes, etc. So my cycle time increases. Actually, we can start to bring that into the schedule and get a really true real-time view of things, which I think is a really good example of that transition from Industry 3 to Industry 4. But knowing the drivers behind it and everything comes from that, all the things you've experienced recently and been talking about of getting the schedule tidied up and getting some of that data right. So I think that's you've clearly through that journey got an appreciation of how important it is, and now you go, well, actually, how can I make sure that that's happening really smoothly all the time, without having to have lots of people involved in it, and I can start to automate some of it. So no, really interesting. Thanks, Sarah. And you're right, I was going to ask you that question. So just really quickly jumping back, you mentioned a little while ago around KPIs, and you have those 4 critical ones that you've got visible on the shop floor through your TV screens at all times in terms of red and green. How are we tracking on these? So how important has that been for you as a business in terms of prioritizing where you go and put your time and your money in terms of investment in technology and Industry 4 projects, having those in the back of your mind as those KPIs?
Well, critical. So those 4 KPIs are basically what's going to keep us in business. If we look at the performance of the company, then they all come down to those 4 things. Like if we're not getting customer delivery right, then we really can't expect that we're going to keep having customers. If we're writing off a whole and spending a fortune on quality, then we might end up having, ideally, we're catching quality before it goes out the door, but it's incredibly inefficient and expensive. And from a forward hours perspective, it's critical in our planning. That lets me know whether I need to go out and start selling, or whether I need to start recruiting because we're getting really busy, or whether we need to, we've finally got we've got the confidence that we can go and purchase that next machine that we've got lined up in our capital planning. And as for the machine hours per day before, look, just having that visibility has created quite a lot of accountability on the floor, and it also kind of gamifies it. So when we've got all greens, like we've got this morning, which is great, there's a whole lot of banter going on the Slack channel from the team going, yeah, we smashed it. So it's it really does define where our time is focused. I suppose like looking at giving a real example, the on-time delivery is we were continually failing to hit that target. And so a material outcome of that was hiring Porrick, our delivery manager, to actually get some more seniority in there and to work on some of these projects to refine the scheduling process. So that's a real outcome of actually going, right, well, no, every now and then we get lucky, but actually we need some more management capability over this.
Yeah, I think that's great to hear it from someone like yourself, Sarah, who's kind of been there and done it, or is doing it. The idea that I probably talk about it too much, to be honest, with my clients, but having that image of what really drives your business, those KPIs, is a surefire way of helping you sift out what you could do is this whole range of projects down to what should we do and is actually realistic for us to achieve it, and start making momentum on.
The
So
cost,
yeah, I think,
the
sorry,
cost
go
of
on.
quality, yeah, the cost of quality one has driven a lot as well. So at one point, our cost of quality was skyrocketing, and we were blowing out most months. And we really identified it down to this culture of, well, the setup that doesn't count. So we were scrapping a lot of setup pieces, and so we, that became the focus of our weekly stand-ups with the company, and a lot of our communications for a good 3 to 4 month period. And it would be quarter of where it was at this time last year, just because the scrap levels have come right down. We've put new processes in place. We share all of the NCRs, so it drove a lot. We actually, again, recruited a quality administrator on the back of that and refined all of our quality processes. So, you hear me talking about recruiting. Industry 4 certainly hasn't reduced our staff numbers.
Yeah, I think it's just changing that dynamic, isn't it, of how we're making people more effective, right? Rather than
focusing on churn, no, we're just really focusing on fine tuning. So, look, we do now have a 50-50 split of machining staff, and then on top of that, we've got QA, we've got mechatronics, and we've got production operations administration.
Wonderful. Well, that's probably a great segue, mentioning mechatronics there, to go into talking about something else that I know you've been working on in terms of the CMM and your use of cobots. So I don't know if you could give us a bit of background onto what the situation was there and what you were trying to achieve, and maybe we'll bring the slides up and get a couple of images going as well
yeah, maybe if you bring up the image of the parts, would be great. So when that pops up, so the image in the middle of these, all those little pieces, they are prosthetic hand components from a company called Tasker that we're very lucky to work with. And we first started working with Tasker about 4 years ago, and they needed to get these hands into production. So they had done some successful prototyping, but had really been struggling to find anybody that could get them into regular production of upwards of 400 to 800 components at a time. We do around 5,000 parts a month for them, sometimes more, and a lot of these are down to 6 to 8 microns in tolerancing, and they could have 14, 15 check dimensions. The other tricky part was that they need 100% inspection. So at that point, we didn't even have a CMM. So we actually purchased a Vision CMM. So it's a vision and probe system. And we then realized very quickly that the measuring of these components by a human was A, a really shitty job, and B, really expensive. So, having to have somebody sit there and manage these, it was also a bit of a health and safety occupational hazard, because handling those tiny components, hundreds of them a day, one at a time, into a CMM was really not efficient. So I think the next slide shows the setup that we've got now, which is we invested in a cobot. We worked with Callaghan Innovation to nut out a bit of a process, and then we hired a summer of tech student through Victoria University, Rogan. And so he worked with us for around 6 weeks over summer, and then we hired him through the Callaghan graduate grant on a full-time permanent basis. And so now we've got this cobot and the CMM in full unmanned production. So we're actually getting up to 24 hours of inspection happening through that setup and that system, which has cobot. I think if you have a look on the top of the CMM there, you'll see there's a bit of a metal looking gadget. So that's a flipper that we've developed, which can allow for measuring of both sides of the components, which sounds simple, but when you're dealing with components that are around 8 millimeters across, there really wasn't anything else on the market that we could find in our research, which would allow us to flip those parts. So that was a Callaghan-backed project as well, because it was a novel thing that didn't exist. And so now those three devices, the cobot, the flipper, and the CMM, are all working autonomously, and it's creating statistical analysis for us automatically and producing those client formatted reports that we send off to Tasker with every batch. So that's, just would have been impossible prior to a few years ago.
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic real world example of bringing a cobot into your business. I hear a lot of people talking about cobots and what they can do, and people should be using them for, but I think more real world examples are what we need to show the kind of thing that it can help with. And this is a brilliant example. I've seen it running in real life, and it's great to watch. It's awesome to know, not just the automation in the physical process, but like you say, the automation in the report building and so on as well. The kind of administration side is very, very kind of end-to-end solution to generate all of that and free up someone's time and free up Robin to go and work on the next project, which I'm sure we'll come to talk about a little bit later on. So just a quick reminder to everyone, again, Q&A is still open, so feel free to share if you've got any questions around cobots and how they can be used, or anything about how they tackled this particular project, then please throw those questions in there.
I suppose one other thing on this is it is so simple how it's been set up now that, like, Rowan has moved on to other projects, and so we do have Nina, who's our quality administrator and has never worked as a mechatronics engineer in her life and comes from more of an administration background, now knows how to operate the robot. And so it's just, it's been quite fantastic. Yeah.
Well, yeah, another great story, right, of this people adopting technology and bringing it into their world and allowing people to, I suppose, move themselves into a position where they're working on problem solving and improving the business, rather than, like you say, that kind of churn of just working through. And that's the old smarter not harder, I suppose, mentality. So was there anything in particular that stands out to you, Sarah, as a challenge that you had to overcome when you were kind of embarking on this particular project?
It took a hell of a lot longer than we expected. Like, I think in hindsight, we made the right choice by hiring Rowan in-house. We had quotes of around the 400,000 to $500,000 to fully automate the Tasker process, which was just not going to be an option. So it did end up taking us the best part of 18 months to get this really working. But the organizational knowledge that we have now, and also the fact that he's had to engage with a number of our machinists to work on the design of the flipper, has just got everybody, it's brought that capability in-house, and it's got everyone thinking about, well, what can we get Rowan to design next, or what can we get Rowan to build next, and what kind of robot can we, it's just change that mindset. So yeah, have patience. I think if we were to do this now from scratch, it would be much, much faster. But I suppose first off, the first off for automation project, have a bit of patience and really do consider bringing that capability in-house.
Yeah, I think a great example again of that, tapping into the skill base coming through, talking to the universities and so on to identify people, bringing them straight into the workforce to add value. Something we end up talking about a lot, but again, on the Q&A, just asking around the setup for the cobots. Is it dedicated for one use, or can it be transferred to other operations, or is it flexible for other things?
Sorry, you froze for a bit there at the start of that. Was that a question that came through on what we're doing with this cobot?
Yeah. So just a question around flexibility with this particular cobot.
With this particular cobot, it's kept in production pretty much constantly with the CMM. We certainly are looking at cobots. This is the UR5, so I think the max weight is 5 kilos. We're looking at more industrial sized robots for loading of our machines. This one wouldn't quite be suitable for that.
Yeah. So I think that's, yeah, another classic example. You've got this set up in a CMM, exactly the same principles can be put in place, and we've seen other companies around the demonstration network, have embarked on that process of getting retrofitting, perfect, older but still perfectly good CNC machinery with robotic arms in front of it to load it and unload it consistently to again reduce the required touch time from operators. So really, good example that this can be applied in lots of different setups. So
one of the other interesting things we've done with the CMM before we flick on from the picture is we did recently acquire 3D printing capability. So we've purchased Mark Forged Onyx carbon fiber composite printer, and also a Mark Forged metal printer, which won't arrive till next month. But we've had the plastic printing capability in-house for about 6 weeks now. So we have actually started, when we're doing new really tricky components, we've started printing our own in-house prototype of that for measurement predominantly. So when we're making a new tricky 5-axis part in particular, the first off, when we need to do a CMM inspection, we basically have to pause the machine, and it could take, for a really complicated part, it could take 4 to 6 hours to do the program on the CMM. So that's just a huge waste of time. And we don't want to turn the machine off, because then we have to reset it up and we'll lose calibration and all of that. So basically what we can do is now get Rovan to print off a prototype, and he's got a good 6 weeks before that job is due to work away on developing a program on the CMM. So the moment the first off comes off the machine, we're actually able to kind of refine that program down in a matter of half an hour and get it straight back into production.
Brilliant. I think that's, again, great example of kind of these technologies coming together, greater than the sum of the parts kind of approach, where using that additive manufacture capability to reduce time wasted, if you like, or time lost elsewhere in the process. So that's really interesting. Wonderful. So some of the other projects that you've embarked on, Sarah, I know we've talked a little bit about Power BI dashboards, and maybe we'll come back to talking a little bit about those in a minute. But the other one I know is around investment in the actual capability on the shop floor in terms of machinery. So maybe you could give us a bit of background around that and talk us through what's going on there.
So I think there's a slide after this one that shows the Mazak. We invested back in end of mid 2019. We made the decision to invest in what we really believed was the machine shop of the future. So we wanted to look at fully automated 24/7 machining capability, and we invested in this Mazak here, which is a i300 5-axis machining center. It has 40 work holding pallets and a 285 tool changer. So it was an enormous investment for us. By the time it's been tooled up, it was around 1.2 million for that one machine. And at the same time, we purchased the Mazak Integrates mill turn, which again is a 5-axis machine and gives us a whole lot of done-in-one capability. So if I were to start with the integrates, there are some components that we're doing now which maybe needed 3 or 4 different operations and different setups. So each one of those setups is a couple, hour and a half to 2 hours, and then you're, jeopardizing your with complex geometry. Sometimes we've got concentricity, which can shift when you're shifting it around machines. So with the integrates, we're now able to do something that might have required 8 hours of setup across 4 different machines and done in one operation, because it is a mill and a turn. And that's just been a huge game changer. We can make, one of these components I'm thinking about, it's now 90 minutes for us to make it end to end. So that's just a level of technology, but also our team's capability. They're very clever. They know how to set these things up, how to program them, and how to fixture and hold them for optimal production capabilities. And on the topic of fixturing, you can see on the right hand of the screen here, that's a picture that Alex has actually designed. So that goes into the Mazak i300. We've got 4 of these fixtures. And in some cases, I really think this illustrates the level of design that goes into the manufacturing process can often be as complex as the design that's actually going into the end product itself. So this allows us to go, right, on the i300, rather than having a whole lot of vices, universal vices, and loading up for one part on each vice, we're coming up with production fixtures that can hold 4 parts at a time. In some cases, we've got one that has 20 at a time. We'll make 4 or 5 of those. And so all of a sudden, we've only used 4 of the i300 work holders, but we've actually managed to crank out about 8 to 10 hours of production because we've got 4 on each of those ones. So it's a real game of strategy around how to optimize the work holding in this machine. And the other thing is, it's given us the ability to go, well, this part's not due for 6 weeks. So actually we're just going to make 10 of them a night, and we'll make 2 of those and 3 of those. And it means we've got it like a 90-second changeover on the machine. So as far as the outputs of that, we can get 24 hours of spindle time out of one 8-hour shift. Whereas on a traditional 5-axis machine, we're running 16-hour days across 2 shifts. We might be lucky if we get 12 hours of spindle time due to the amount of setup and the changing over of jobs. So it's just been a total game changer, and has driven a lot of our investment into the QA team and into further ERP and operations management capabilities.
I think that's there's some great things to unpick there. I think I love the blend of brand new technology with the, I suppose, more traditional Kiwi ingenuity, right? You're not, this technology doesn't do everything for you. You've kind of taken it and gone, well, actually, how can we make this even better by producing these fixtures and so on to refine it? So I think that's a really, really interesting story as well.
Yeah, so instead of using the 40 work holders to make 40 parts in 48 hours, we can, or 40 parts, we can use the 40 work holdings to make 200 or 300 if we're fixturing everything right.
Yeah. And again, that, I suppose, that all stems from that strategy that you talked about earlier around partnering with your client base and building those longer term relationships, giving you the confidence to go and then invest in fixturing and set things up like that. Because if it was all one-offs, then you wouldn't be going down that route, presumably.
Well, I mean, a really great example would be Shot Over Camera Systems, who have been, they're a huge client for us and have been for a long time. But they do some camera systems which are in production runs of 10. However, they also do some really high-end, like multi-million-dollar builds, which they might only sell 1 or 2 a year. They're not going to do a long-run production, but we can put that into this machine and make a one-piece flow with like pretty much no setup time whatsoever. So it's really well designed for low-run, high-value production.
Yeah, perfect for the kind of client base that you're working with. Then, yeah, ideal. So we've looked at a few different examples here, and I think there's a bit of a theme, particularly between the CMM and here, is that idea of flexibility. So I think that's an underpinning of Industry 4 as well in terms of principles. Is this that historically Industry 3 would be setting up some automation, and it would be and that's traditionally always been huge runs, automating our processes to repeat the same process over and over again.
Yeah.
and comparable to this flexibility is actually quite challenging to make that move. So you're really playing off the need to be flexible, both in terms of your scheduling, you're talking about being agile there, but also in terms of the way you've set the shop up and the equipment you're investing in has got that flexibility element built in as well, by the sounds of it.
Yeah. Flexibility is really difficult to automate. And so, some of the other things that we've done from an efficiency perspective are we have worked very hard to train most of our senior machinists, like cross-train them. So all of the team of our top kind of 4 or 5 senior machinists can run pretty much every single machine in the shop. They can all program. So we do 99% of our programming is done off machine in CAD CAM. And we also invested in Top Solid, which offers greater machine simulation. So we can do a full simulation off machine before we put it on the machine. That has avoided the word that we don't say out loud in the shop, CRASH. And that's been really important as well, because as we've moved from spending a couple of $100,000 on a machine to like over $1 million, you don't want CRASHs to happen at all. So yeah, it's really, and the other thing that we've done is a lot of universal fixturing. So across the i300, the UMC and the VF2, we have universal fixtures so that we can chuck parts on all 3 machines at once if we've got to do something really, really urgently and it's a longer run, or so that we can just be quite nimble, and if there's bottlenecks on one of the machines, we can make it on the other and spread that work across the shop. That's been huge for us. And it's been huge for the manufacturing team as well. I suppose I've done a lot of coaching, and Alex now says that I know far too much and I'm dangerous, because if they try to manufacture a part that doesn't need to be on the best and greatest machine, then I know that I can put it and fill it up one of the underutilized ones.
Nice. That's yeah, knowing enough to be dangerous sounds familiar. I've caused a few crashes before in my time, but we won't talk about those. So right, so we've talked about a few specific examples, and hopefully that was useful. We get a lot of feedback on our webinars and during our tours and so on, where people are asking for detail. They want to know, how did you get into that project? How, what did you actually do? So hopefully we've touched on a lot of that, but probably a good time to just take a step back and look at maybe a slightly higher level around some of the challenges, broadly across the business, and also what the rewards and benefits have been. We've talked about kind of individual projects, but if you had to try and pinpoint, 1 or 2 main challenges you've had, when embarking on this journey as a whole, is there anything that stands out to you as something that, a bit of a warning or a heads up for those that might be thinking about it?
I think you can get paralysis by analysis. It's to get started. It's really easy to get overwhelmed and try and do everything at once. And so, we have this big picture vision, but we also have some really, really simple, I suppose what we would call barriers to production, that we brainstorm out with the team. And so each one of those essentially becomes a project. And we don't schedule our improvements and our implementation to the 10th degree. But what we do is go, okay, well, these are all the things that we need to fix, or all of the opportunities that we could develop. Let's prioritize them across a quarter on an annual basis. Some of them might actually not quite make the cut, so they go into the bucket for the next year. So we prioritize things quarterly, and then on a quarterly basis, we just take a look back at what we've done. And even just looking back on an annual basis, it's amazing how much you've actually chipped away at if you just take that approach of one thing at a time, prioritize it based on, I talk a lot about the is it going to bounce or is it going to break? So, when everything is shit, then you just need to go, well, what's the shittiest? And if I were to drop this ball is something going to break, or can it just bounce for a little bit longer while I deal with the things that are really going to break? And I think we all get into that period where things get really, really busy, and you shove all of that improvement to the side because you're just focused on the day to day. And in that case, it's just having small projects and small incremental improvements and opening it up to the whole team so everybody has permission to be able to fix something. Something we have done very recently, because it has been chaos, is we'll take at least one day across the teams a month, a whole day where we stop production. We don't do anything day to day. We start the day off in a room and brainstorm exactly what they want to fix that day. And so they just have a full 8-hour shift to fix something. And then that kind of gets them stimulated for the next few weeks to keep chipping away at those things when they get time in a half an hour or 1 hour interval. We do a lot of 30-minute sprints to just get things done. And by the time you come around to your production, your improvements day a month later, actually a whole lot more has been done. So yeah, I suppose it's patience and not wanting everything to be perfect at once.
Yeah, I think that's there's some really, really good bits of advice in there. I think that first one you said around analysis paralysis, couldn't agree more. I see that a lot. And if we've got down to our top few ideas, broadly, it doesn't matter whether this idea is number 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. If it's going to add value, and we've got some idea about how to crack into it, then let's get on with it. And yeah, it might be number 5 on the list, but it's still got value to it, and we've moved forward rather than spending the rest of our time trying to pick out what number 1 is. So yeah, there's that broad prioritization, like you say, on that annual and then quarterly basis is important. But then beyond that, that kind of not sweating it too much and getting more action, which is brilliant. And I love that reflection piece as well. Whether any client that I'm talking to or working with, so often we're looking at the 5% that's not right. And naturally that causes you to start to get into that negative space. You're always looking at the problems, and actually there's 95% of stuff that we do really, really well. We get some good quality products out the door, and sometimes you need to stop to look back and reflect on the progress you have made to keep that momentum going and keep everyone motivated. So I think some really, really good kind of bits of advice in there, and something that I'm seeing across the board. So in terms of benefits, rewards, what's been a standout in terms of that and adopting some of these technologies for you?
It's difficult to where to start. I mean, for me, and I know for Alex as well, like the standout has really been watching the growth of our team, and the growth of our capability. I think, really, this is going to sound weird, but if I go away for a couple of weeks, like I've had 2 or 3 weeks off in the last few weeks, it's like coming back to a warm cuddle. Like I miss my team, and everyone really enjoys their jobs because they know that they can, if they get bored, they can learn a new machine, they can learn a new technology. We can start to teach them programming. So it's really been, as we've evolved and adopted more Industry 4, there's become so many other streams of expertise that people can pursue. And so it really has created these career pathways that they probably wouldn't get anywhere else. And it's just been a real pleasure to watch that and to watch people stay as well. Like with people don't tend to leave, so we have to be really careful about who we let on. And that has started to grow a bit of a culture where we see, friends of our employees or word of mouth creating this people that want to come and work for us because of what we're doing. Not just because of who we work for, which is really cool, but because of what we're doing, that like we're pushing the boundaries of what you would expect from a standard CNC machine shop. Yeah,
I think that's brilliant, right? And then, like every business, not only are you competing for out there for clients and for work, you're also, everybody at the moment in particular is competing for people and getting the best people into their business. So if this gives you that edge to get good people in, then that's brilliant as well, right? It's a classic with investing in technology and taking this journey is, you can put dollars against some things. I know this will give me this much extra capacity and I can put a dollar figure against that, but it's very hard to put a figure against all the other stuff that comes around it. Like you've talked about the cultural element as well. So I think, it's when people are doing business cases, I often talk about, the intangibles will pretty soon outweigh the tangibles when you invest in the right thing. So yeah, really, really interesting. And I suppose that, just in terms of time, we've kind of got want to leave a little bit of time for any questions at the end, and that Q&A is still open. But what do you think is next for you? What have you got on the horizon, and how are you picking that, I suppose, in terms of
this is the constant battle. There's so many things we want to do, but look, I think first off is definitely going paperless. So we have, we've talked about wanting to be paperless for ages, and I probably started that project almost a year ago. And then we discovered we had to put, better computers at every single workstation. And then to get the better computers, we had to actually get better workstations because our benches didn't allow for all of the cords and for the proper setup of the computers. So, that's quite a big capital intensive project. And then actually things were a bit slow. So we had to upgrade our server and transition to a physical server again. And it's been a year of getting our physical hardware and server infrastructure to the point that we can go paperless. I think the paperless part is actually the easy part. So we've got a new thank you for that. We've got a new global user interface application that we've now installed on a couple of people's PCs, and they've been trialing it for me. So I really hope that we'll be able to get to that point with no more printed routers, hopefully within the next 6 to 8 weeks. It's my number one priority. We're also looking at how we digitize quality. So at the moment, our quality inspection reports, except for the CMM, are all still paper-based. So we'll be looking at software and how we introduce that on the shop floor, which will be much easier once we've now got all of the hardware. We've got faster performing computers on the server, and the team will be much more used to not having paper. And then we're also looking at a bit of really cool, can't say too much, but some cool software around quoting and quality as well, which are using the CAD files. And it's going to automate a lot of that router building. It's going to automate a lot of our quoting, and it's also going to make the intuitiveness of the quality software much better. So that's quite cool. And then so it's interesting, we're a machine shop, but all of these major projects are software related. From a hardware perspective, we're very much focused on shifting towards more automation on the UMC and the VF2 in particular. We actually, we bought the 3D printing, so we'll be onboarding that. And whilst it's not technically Industry 4, we've also acquired an anodizing plant, which will be arriving from the States in the next 6 weeks. And so next year we would like to embark on a big project to fully automate that. So looking at the software development and the control systems, and actually really refining the anodizing process down. So there's a fair bit in the pipeline.
Yeah, you mentioned something about prioritization, didn't you? So
I think I sounded like they were prioritized. Yeah.
No, it sounds great, and yeah, can't wait to see all of these things starting to come to fruition. It's going to be really interesting to see how the journey goes from here. So that's amazing. So I suppose starting to look at rounding out the conversation a little bit, is there some standout pieces of advice that you would give to attendees and other manufacturers that are thinking about taking on some of these technology challenges?
Look, I really think initially getting the team on board and making sure culturally everybody sees the opportunity in it for them. All too often you hear about Industry 4 and automation as being a replacement for people, and your teams will all be acutely aware of that. So I suppose it's reframing it with the team around this being about all of us being able to lift our jobs up the value chain a bit, and that it's about getting better visibility and making their jobs easier and enabling them to perform so that they've actually got time to learn new things and add more value. And that will really pave the way for all of your future implementation. I think it's spreading the load by we share a lot of data. We share our profit and loss, we share our cash flow, we share everything with the team very openly. I know a lot of people are quite uncomfortable about that, but when the going gets tough, it's just a game changer. Like through COVID, it made an enormous difference. Like we saved 40% of our wage bill just purely through the team volunteering to reduce their hours, to take wage concessions. And that came because they were acutely aware of where the position was. We'd always been open and transparent with them, and it became a team effort about managing the company through that period. And now that we're back into growth mode, it means they have confidence in our figures. So we don't actually have overtime rates. We work on a bonus and a performance scheme, and that's worked incredibly well. So it means everybody, and consider that as it puts everybody in the position of being able to benefit and bonus from performance-based rather than hours-based operation. And I think just have patience around how long your first actual automation project might take, and make sure you've got that organizational capability sorted. So really scope what kind of team you need before you embark too far on an ERP project or on any kind of significant data visualization efforts, just because you need the right people in-house in order to be able to deliver on that, and you need the right kind of operational rhythm. So if we talk about rhythm, it's what frequency you're going to have a daily stand-up, what data is going to be in it, how often are you going to get your leadership team together, and what does your management meeting look like, and what data are you looking at. So we kind of, I suppose, manually pulled a lot of that together to start with, and had dashboards that were handwritten for a while there, and then we slowly built the digital side around that, but we ran it in beta with people and manual data in the first place.
Yeah, so I think putting that out, I think that patience one, definitely something we've heard a few times today. That what's in it for me, and getting the team on board. Couldn't agree more. From what I've seen, technology quite often is only as good as the team that are there to leverage it. So without that, that's and that's something that I'm particularly passionate about. And like you say, bringing the right skills into the business, and not analysing too far before you pick your first priority. So I think there's a handful of really, really useful takeaways there, Sarah, that hopefully will help those that have jumped on the webinar today with making some decisions around where they want to go next. And just in line with that, I think it's probably a good opportunity to start wrapping up. What I would say, if you've got any final questions that you want to pitch to Sarah or myself, again, there, I think, Sarah, it's always great to catch up and to be hearing about what you guys are doing down in Dunedin. It's a phenomenal operation. It's awesome to see the progress, and the way that you talk about it, is full with passion, and you're really clear around where you want to go and what you want to be as an organisation, which is awesome. From my perspective, Lots of takeaways, which a big part of the Industry 4 demonstration network is to show other people what everyone else is up to, and share these examples of success, share the challenges of what's not gone well, and how have you tackled it, that agility piece. So I think that's really important to stress as well. So thank you very much for that. In terms of where to next and what else is available for those that are on the webinar today, most of you will be familiar with the Industry 4 Demonstration Network website, industry4.govt. If you go on there, and you'll see all the different parts of the Industry 4 Demonstration Network, which is powered by Callaghan Innovation. So you've got the mobile showcase, which is touring the country at the moment, powered by Becker. So I've put that together. Cocoa, the Cobot, and the chocolate factory, that they go around all sorts of different organizations, just kind of give people an introduction to those technologies. So check that out. All that's on the events page, as well as what is our newest edition, which is the Smart Factory Showcase. So we've got a couple of dates coming up in Auckland, the 21st and 29th of September, here at the EMA. And then we've got dates on the 19th of October and the 18th of November in Christchurch as well. So and there'll be plenty more dates coming up around the country that we can keep you informed about. So that Smart Factory Showcase is a digital experience touring you through Nortec Electronics, based up here in Auckland, but showing you the technologies they've adopted to help them on their journey to becoming a smart factory. So again, just trying to give people real life demonstrations of adoption of technology and the advantages that it's had, the challenges that have had to be overcome. So definitely keep your eye out for those. And last but not least, hopefully at the end of today's session, you'll get a survey link come through to you. So really appreciate if you're able to jump on and fill out that survey. We're always keen to carry on our continuous improvement journey, make sure things are going in the right direction. And if there's anything in particular you want to hear more about, then please do let us know that as well. If you want us to get in touch, please do leave your details on those survey forms. They are anonymous, but if you want us to get in touch with you, do leave your details and we can talk to you a bit more about what you're interested in hearing about. So with that done, I suppose just a case to say thank you very much, Sarah, for jumping on. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. It's always good to catch up. And yeah, look, I think we love people coming through the workshop. So if anyone's ever in Dunners, then do feel free to reach out and come for a walkthrough. We're very into collaboration, and so yeah, there's a number of people, including Nortec, that took us through his workshop about 3 years ago, and that was one, a large part of the inspiration for where we are. So yeah, I think this collaboration will rise the tide together. There's a whole lot of opportunity.
Brilliant. And just a quick thank you to everyone kind of behind the scenes here. You don't get to see that Jason, Emily, Lydia, that you briefly met at the start there, are all making the webinar possible. So a big thank you to them as well. And thank you everyone for jumping on. If you want to get in touch, contact details are on that website as well if you want to know any more. So thank you all, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Oh, thank you.
See you, Sarah.
See ya.